I think in a way, even though we live in the internet age where we're more connected than ever, we have more access to outside perspectives and information. You can hop on a call and talk to a stranger any second of the day. You can make friends online. You can meet friends in person much easier. Despite all of this, despite the convenience that the internet has provided, I feel like people are more lonely than ever. And I felt that in my own life in a way. It seems like you can be in a crowd full of people and feel completely alone. You can have friends around and feel completely alone. And I think part of it is just that people are so inauthentic. You go on YouTube and most of these videos, they feel scripted, they feel, hyper edited, they feel like almost someone is like putting on a presentation of what they want to be, of what they want to present, like none of it feels real and genuine. It seems like very corporate, and not just YouTube. That's just the example that's been on my mind lately, but I think sort of everything. Maybe it's always been this way, maybe it's changed, but my entire life I've kind of felt like the people in my life were very fake, or my relationships were very surface level. It seems like no one is really capable of knowing someone on a deeper level, or letting down their guard and being vulnerable and getting to know someone for who they really are. It's like we all are fragile and we've been hurt, and we throw up these massive walls and they never come down. And we present that when we meet people, present that through relationships, even friendships that have been years and years long. You can feel like you've known someone your entire life, and yet you don't really know them. You can feel like, you met this person a long time ago and you've spent thousands of hours together, but you don't really know them the way that you know yourself. You don't really have the sort of friendship you're looking for, maybe. And you can't expect that from everyone, but, is it wrong to want that from at least somebody? Is it wrong to, want people in your life that you feel like are seeing you and you're seeing them beyond this shallow surface level? And is it wrong to expect friendships like that to last? It feels like most of my friendships, even friendships I've had for a long time, kind of fell through the cracks, and part of it was, on both sides, that we just didn't know each other that well when it came down to it. Like, we weren't really that close. It was just out of convenience. It was for the sake of entertainment. Sometimes I invested in relationships, and years later I realized that it turned out to be a massive waste of time in a way. Sure, I enjoyed the time I spent with these people, but ultimately they could not reciprocate the level of friendship I wanted. And, it kind of just fell through, and it just feels like a waste. I invested so much into this person, and now they're not a part of my life at all. It's like, I think there's this thing called parasocial relationships, where very lonely people, or it can just be anyone who's just seeking something like this, they go online and they try to find role models or people they can look up to, and they almost have a friendship with this person despite never meeting them. They feel like they can be in the room with that person and feel what they're saying in a big way, and there's people on the internet who go out and they take advantage of that, and they feel like they have this strong community where they want all their subscribers to feel like they're a close friend and want them to buy their merch and do this and that, and it's just predatory. It seems like the world is built off of recognizing weaknesses and taking advantage of it, and so something like that is only natural. But it's very clear to me as I look out and I see these sorts of practices that there really is such a population of young people in the world, mostly young people I'd say, that are very alone, chronically alone. No matter how much time they spend with other people, they feel alone. They don't feel seen, they don't feel understood, but beyond that, they don't feel like they can be themselves. They don't feel like they can let down that guard. Maybe, at least in the past, you had a couple people like that. Maybe true friendships did exist, but nowadays it seems like everyone would rather self-isolate. Relationships are at an all-time low in a lot of ways. They say that young people have less friendships on average than they did in the past. They go on less dates, they have less social interaction, and we make up for that by trying to have these parasocial relationships or having online friends or just kind of distracting ourselves, like watching content online or TV shows and in a way kind of projecting the same way you do on YouTube onto fictional characters and pretending that these people are your true friends. And it's really sad because humans are a social species. Like, we need that level of connection. We need this level of depth that goes beyond just, the day-to-day school friend kind of atmosphere. Like, people kind of feel fake. It feels like when you're talking to them, when you're opening up, it might feel like sometimes, you can see in their eyes they're just waiting for their opportunity to speak. They don't actually care what you have to say. And for people who have lived with that their entire lives, they might not know there's anything different. They might have never had a real relationship, a genuine relationship that was built off of unconditional love and actually being vulnerable and letting your guard down and getting to know each other on a deeper level. And so they might just see that as the norm. They might just expect that. But I realized it's sort of a symptom of this decay of certain values in the world. And as I've traveled and left the United States and I've gone to other countries, I realized that it's not like that everywhere. Like, it seems like with a stranger, I feel more seen than I did with my best friend in the United States. It feels like people out here aren't walking around with massive shields. Maybe it's a difference in culture. Maybe they don't feel as attacked, so they don't naturally curl up and distance themselves from the world the same way we do in the West. Or maybe it's just because genuinely they haven't been as attacked and so they haven't needed to build those defenses. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've definitely seen the light. I've seen that it can be a different way, and it probably was in the past, and it makes me start to wonder, beg the question, like, what changed, And I guess more than that, what can we do in our own lives to try to make up for this feeling, to try to combat that, because whatever the reason is, whether it's because of, the progression of technology or our society or cultural things, like whatever is causing it, the reality is that it exists and people are suffering with it. I think many people feel very alone and they are desperate for help. They're desperate for role models on the internet. They're desperate for anything that can make them feel like life is worth living again and that they aren't alone, that they are a part of this community, that humans are meant to be. We're social animals. I think for me in my own life, I sort of went down a very similar road. I was lucky to have a couple of really close friends, one of them being my brothers. Some of them being my brothers, sorry. And, because I think we're siblings and we were of a like mind on this, I cultivated good relationships with them. But for the most part, I still felt this way. And I would cope with it the same way most people did. I would watch sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother, and I felt like, these characters were my friends in a way. I could relate to them. I could feel like I was being social in their presence. When I got health issues and I left school, I spent a lot of time alone, and I ended up falling into a lot of these same patterns. And I think overall, the only thing that has helped me with this over the years, that has helped with my loneliness and helped me feel, more connected and more alive, was working on my relationship with myself, honestly. Like, once I had that firm, groundwork laid where I was my own best friend, I was there for myself, and I never quite felt as alone. And then it felt like I was able to be vulnerable in a way that no one else around me was. Maybe I had always had this guard up, and I didn't even realize it. It was because when I was younger, just like everyone else, I started to develop an ego as I was confronted with the harshness of reality and with other people's egos. And as I started to do the work to consciously break down my barriers, I came around with more vulnerability, and I felt like suddenly, even with strangers, I could get what I was looking for. I could get that feeling of actually connecting with the person in the moment. And it's not about knowing every single thing about one another. It's just about looking each other in the eyes and seeing each other's individuality, and in a way lowering our guards and being vulnerable in a sense, saying, I see you, that you exist, that you are just as real as I am, and I am existing in this present with you. And, like at this place I'm staying, there's a sauna, and it's sort of in a public area, and people are always using it. Every time I go in there, I have kind of a fun little reaction because it's always full of these Russian guys, and they're always trying to talk to me, and I don't speak Russian, so I'll be sitting in the corner with my head down, all sweating, and some Russian guy comes in, and he kind of like gives me like a look, and he assumes I'm Russian because that's most of the tourists in this area. So he comes and sits down and kind of like smiles at me and says something in Russian, and I reply like, no Ruski, you know, like I don't speak Russian or whatever. And he just like laughs a little bit, and we just like kind of like smile at each other and just like nod, and just like, even though we can't communicate at all, in that moment I feel like, you know, this person is more of a friend to me than some of my friends I had for years, because this person in some way I feel is seeing me in a way that my friends didn't. And I'm not exactly sure what this is, like why it's taken such a hold of young people in the United States, at least where I grew up, but I know it's a much deeper issue than that. I'm not exactly sure why this happened, but I do know that the way to fix it, the way I found in my own life, is just to look inward. You know, you need to be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to have deeper relationships, try to come around with more vulnerability and try to work on your self-esteem and your self-importance and your relationship with yourself, 3 selves. And, you know, maybe if you're able to be vulnerable, some people will hurt you. Some people will react badly. It's a hard thing to want to lower your guard because we have guards for a reason. But I promise that if you're able to start making that change, other people will see that, and maybe your relationships will improve. Sometimes I've noticed that these relationships in my life weren't what I was wanting, and it wasn't just the other person's fault. You know, nothing is completely one-sided. It was my fault too, because I wasn't enough to make the difference, you know. It's like sometimes you can switch the entire momentum of a friendship just by deciding to change something inward, you know, and come around with a different kind of attitude. And maybe you'll start to have profound experiences with these people that you've known for years, and your friendship will evolve and grow, and you'll have something more of a community, more of what you've really wanted deep down. Like, I think it's strange that as we were evolving, we were in large group-like societies. Not incredibly large, but you probably had a family of like 12 or 13 people hunting together, sleeping together, like, you know, just a part of this hunter-gatherer community. Nowadays, it's like people go off on their own. You know, they have friends when they're younger, maybe they keep some of them, but most adults I know, they just have their spouse or, you know, their wife or their husband, and they have their kids, and they have a couple of friends maybe, and they barely see them. And they have relatives they'll see occasionally, and then, you know, they see people at work and things. But it's crazy how far we've moved away from the natural social community that we're evolved to have. Like, it shouldn't be this tiny unit of just a couple of people. It should be a larger community, you know. It should be like when you're fostering the youth, they, you know, interacting with several generations of this tribe. Like, they, you know, receive the wisdom of the grandparents and the great-grandparents, and they have a relationship and a connection with each of these people in their lives, and maybe their uncles and their aunts, like whoever was a part of your family that was like your tribe in a way. Like, you guys fought together, you struggled together, and you became very close through that bond. And I think whether we realize it or not, becoming so separated from that, I think, is doing a lot of negativity to our consciousness and to our emotional states. So I guess all we can really do is be aware of this, be aware of these subtle changes in the world and within ourselves, and just try to do our best to act accordingly. And if you feel lonely, you know, make the effort. I think that's the only thing that can change your situation, because I promise that there are people who, if you come around with the right attitude and meeting them, are capable of having a deeper level of friendship than you've experienced, and maybe something more like what you're looking for. And I hope this would help. I hope this helps some of you.